The transport ship cut through the darkness of space, moving toward a world that no longer existed. Commander Daniel Shaw stood at the bridge window, watching the planet grow larger. New Haven, a name that once meant hope. A name that now meant something else entirely. "We're entering orbit in 10 minutes, sir," said Lieutenant Grace Holloway from her station. Her voice was steady, but Daniel had served with her for 5 years. He could hear the fear underneath. "Any life signs?" he asked. Grace was quiet for a moment. Her fingers moved across the console. "No, sir, nothing." Daniel had expected this. The distress signal had stopped 3 days ago. But expecting something and accepting it were different things. He had friends on New Haven. He had attended weddings there. He had held babies who were now gone. The ship descended through the atmosphere. Smoke still rose from the surface. The colony's main city, which had been called Hopevale, was nothing but ash and broken buildings. Daniel could see the remains of homes, schools, hospitals. Everything that humans had built over 20 years of hard work had been destroyed in a single day. They landed in what used to be the central square. Daniel was the first one out. The smell hit him immediately. Burnt metal, burnt wood, burnt flesh. He had smelled death before, but never like this. Never on this scale. Grace came up beside him. Her face was pale. 17,000 people, she whispered. There were 17,000 people here. Daniel said nothing. He started walking. They moved through the ruins for hours. Every street told the same story. The Valkyrie had been thorough. They had targeted civilians first. The shelters had been hit before the military installations. The schools before the power plants. This was not a battle. This was a message. Daniel found the first body near what used to be a playground. A woman, maybe 30 years old, still holding a child in her arms. They had died together. He knelt beside them and closed the woman's eyes. "Why?" Grace asked. She was crying now, tears cutting lines through the ash on her face. Why would they do this? Daniel knew the answer. The Valkyrie Dominion had ruled this part of the galaxy for 2,000 years. They were a coalition of 7 alien species who believed they were superior to everyone else. When humans arrived in the stars 50 years ago, the Valkyrie had watched with amusement. These soft, short-lived creatures from a small blue planet were not a threat. They were a joke, but humanity had grown. They had built colonies. They had made friends with species that the Valkyrie considered beneath them. And slowly, the joke had stopped being funny. New Haven was the Valkyrie's way of reminding humanity of its place. Stay small. Stay weak. Stay afraid. Or die. Daniel stood up. He looked at Grace. Document everything, he said. Every body. Every building. Every crime. The galaxy will see what happened here. They worked for 3 days. The rest of the crew joined them. Nobody spoke much. There was nothing to say. They found 17,423 bodies. Men, women, children, the elderly, the sick. The Valkyrie had spared no one. On the last day, Daniel found something in the ashes of a destroyed home. A small stuffed bear, burnt but still recognizable. A child's toy. He picked it up and held it in his hands. For a long moment, he just stared at it. Grace found him like that. She didn't say anything. She just stood beside him. I'm done, Daniel said quietly. Sir? I'm done being sad. I'm done being afraid. He looked at her. His eyes were dry. Something in them had changed. Now, I'm angry. 2 weeks later, Daniel stood in the back of the United Nations General Assembly Hall on Earth. Every seat was filled. Every screen in the world was broadcasting this moment. Ambassador Catherine Price walked to the podium. She was a small woman, 60 years old, with gray hair and a gentle face. She had spent her career building peace between nations. She had believed that diplomacy could solve any problem. That was before New Haven. "I will now read the names of the dead," she said. Her voice was calm. "Please bear witness." She read for 6 hours. 6 hours of names. Daniel listened to every single one. He memorized them. He burned them into his memory. When Catherine finished, she looked up at the assembly. "The Volturi Dominion has sent us their terms," she said. "They demand that we abandon all colonies beyond our solar system. They demand that we pay tribute to them every year. They demand that we accept our status as an inferior species." The hall was silent. "For 50 years, Catherine continued, humanity has approached the galaxy with open hands. We wanted friendship. We wanted cooperation. We wanted peace. We believed that if we were kind, others would be kind in return." She paused. Her gentle face hardened. "We were wrong." A murmur went through the assembly. Catherine raised her hand for silence. "The Volturi mistake our kindness for weakness. They believe that because we chose peace, we are incapable of war. They believe that because we showed them respect, we are afraid of them." She leaned forward. "They are about to learn how wrong they are." Daniel felt something shift in the room. It was like watching a sleeping giant open its eyes. "To the Volturi Dominion I say this," Catherine said. "You wanted to teach humanity a lesson. Congratulations. You have succeeded. But the lesson we learned is not the one you intended." She looked directly into the camera. "We're done being polite." The assembly erupted. Not an argument, but an agreement. For the first time in human history, every nation stood united. Old enemies shook hands. Ancient grudges were forgotten. There was no more east or west, north or south. There was only humanity. And humanity was angry. Daniel walked out of the assembly hall into the sunlight. Grace was waiting for him. "What happens now?" she asked. Daniel looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, the Volturi were celebrating their easy victory. They thought they had broken humanity. They thought wrong. "Now," Daniel said, "we get to work." 3 months passed. Earth was silent. The Volturi watched and waited for humanity's response. They expected crying. They expected begging. They expected a broken species crawling to them on its knees, ready to accept any terms. Instead, they got nothing. "The humans are in shock," the Volturi High Council decided. "They have accepted their defeat. Soon they will come to us." They were half right. Humanity was not crying or begging, but they had not accepted anything. Behind closed doors, away from the eyes of the galaxy, something was happening. Something that would change everything. General Marcus Cole stood in the center of a massive underground facility beneath the mountains of Colorado. Around him, thousands of workers moved like ants, building things that had never existed before. Ships, weapons, technology that had been locked away in classified files for decades. Marcus was 62 years old. He had gray hair, a lined face, and eyes that had seen too much war. His daughter, Amy, had been a teacher on New Haven. She had died with her students, protecting them until the end. Marcus kept her photograph in his pocket. He touched it every morning when he woke up. "General," said a voice behind him, "the latest reports from the coalition." Marcus turned. Dr. Nina Vance walked toward him, carrying a tablet. She was young, maybe 35, with short dark hair and sharp eyes. Before New Haven, she had been a physicist working on theoretical weapons. Her superiors had called her work too aggressive for peacetime. They had buried her research in bureaucracy and forgotten about her. Marcus had found her files. 3 days after the massacre, he had called her within the hour. "Tell me," he said. Nina smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Russia has completed their engine modifications. China has delivered the shield generators. India's targeting systems are ahead of schedule. Germany's armor plating arrived this morning. Marcus nodded. Before New Haven, getting two countries to agree on anything had been nearly impossible. Now, every nation on Earth was working together. They shared secrets that had been guarded for generations. They gave freely what they would have killed to protect the four. "And your project?" Marcus asked. Mina's smile widened. "Project Prometheus is on track. We'll be ready." Marcus looked at the ships being built around him. 800 vessels. It was not many. The Valkyrie had tens of thousands. But these ships were different. They were built with something the Valkyrie did not understand: desperation and rage. Far from Earth, in the dark spaces between stars, Daniel Shaw and Grace Holloway moved like ghosts through Valkyrie territory. Their ship was small and fast, designed to be invisible. They had crossed the border 3 months ago with a simple mission: learn everything. And they had learned a great deal. "The Dominion is not as strong as it appears," Daniel said, reviewing data on his screen. They were hiding in an asteroid field, waiting for a patrol to pass. The 7 species hate each other almost as much as they hate outsiders. Grace sat beside him, studying intelligence reports. "The Kreth want independence. The Morvani are planning a rebellion. The Telek are only loyal because they're afraid." "Fear," Daniel said. "That's all that holds them together. The Valkyrie rule through terror. If someone showed the subject species that the Valkyrie can be beaten, the whole thing falls apart," Grace finished. They looked at each other. The same thought passed between them. This was not just a war they could win. This was a war they could end forever. "There's something else," Grace said. She pulled up a file. "The Valkyrie have a weakness in their shield technology. It's small, but it's there. Nina's team might be able to use it." Daniel studied the data. A flaw in the shield harmonics. If they could tune their weapons to the right frequency, they could cut through Valkyrie defenses like paper. "We need to get this back to Earth," he said. Grace nodded. "I'll set a course. We can be home in 2 weeks if we push the engines." Daniel looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valkyrie were preparing for humanity's surrender. They had no idea what was coming. Back on Earth, Catherine Price sat alone in her office. It was late at night. The city was quiet. She read the reports from the Coalition and felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. She had been a diplomat her entire life. She believed in talking, in compromise, in finding common ground. The massacre had nearly broken her. For weeks after New Haven, she had wondered if everything she believed was wrong. But then she had watched humanity come together. She had seen old enemies become brothers. She had witnessed the impossible become real. And she had understood something important. Humanity was not weak because they preferred peace. They were strong because they could choose peace, even when war was easier. They were strong because they could set aside their differences when it mattered. They were strong because they cared about each other. The Valkyrie did not understand this. They saw humanity's kindness as a flaw. They were about to learn it was their greatest weapon. Catherine looked at the calendar on her wall. In 9 months, Earth's fleet would be ready. In 9 months, the Valkyrie would receive their answer. She smiled and turned back to her work. In orbit above Earth, the first of the new ships completed its construction. It was called the Defiance. It was smaller than Valkyrie battleships, but faster and more deadly. Its hull was painted black, invisible against the darkness of space. Daniel Shaw had been assigned as its captain. He would lead the fleet into battle when the time came. But first, there was more work to do. More secrets to steal. More weaknesses to find. More alliances to build. The galaxy thought humanity was broken. The galaxy was wrong. In secret bases around the world, Engineers worked through the night. In hidden laboratories, scientists built weapons that had never existed before. In training camps, soldiers prepared for a war they knew might kill them all. And in the darkness of space, Daniel and Grace continued their mission, gathering the pieces of a puzzle that would change everything. 3 months of silence. 3 months of preparation. 3 months of building the storm. The Volturi wanted a broken species. They were about to meet something very different. They were about to meet humanity united. And humanity was ready. 1 year after the massacre, the Volturi envoy arrived on Earth. His name was Vornak, and he was considered one of the finest diplomats in the Dominion. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes that could see in every direction at once. He had negotiated the surrender of a dozen species. He expected this to be easy. The humans had been quiet for so long. Surely they had accepted their fate. Surely they understood that resistance was pointless. He would collect their tribute, accept their submission, and return home as a hero. He was wrong. Catherine Price met him in Geneva, in the same building where human nations had once debated among themselves. Now it was the headquarters of the United Earth Coalition. There were no more separate countries. There was only humanity. Ambassador Vornak, Catherine said with a polite smile. Thank you for coming. Please, sit down. Would you like some tea? Vornak was confused. He had expected tears. He had expected fear. Instead, this small human woman was offering him a hot drink. I am here to collect your tribute, he said, and your surrender. The Dominion's terms are clear. You will withdraw from all colonies. You will pay us 30% of your economic output every year. You will accept your place as an inferior species. Catherine nodded, as if he had said something very interesting. Yes, we received your terms. We discussed them quite thoroughly. And? Catherine slid a folder across the table. We have a counter-offer. Vornak opened the folder. Inside was a single photograph. It showed a planet from orbit. Blue oceans. Green continents. White clouds. His heart stopped. It was Velther Prime, the homeworld. The most protected planet in the Dominion. No enemy had ever come close to it. This photograph was taken 1 week ago, Catherine said calmly, by a human ship. It entered your most secure space, orbited your capital city for 3 hours, and left without being detected. Vornak's 4 eyes went wide with horror. This is impossible. And yet, Catherine smiled. We could have done anything, Ambassador. We could have dropped bombs. We could have fired missiles. We could have killed millions. We chose to take a picture. She leaned forward. Consider this our final act of politeness. Vornak stood so fast his chair fell over. His hands were shaking. You dare threaten the Dominion? Threaten? Catherine shook her head. No, Ambassador. This is not a threat. This is a fact. You came to Earth expecting to find a broken species. You expected us to kneel. But we are not broken. And we do not kneel. She stood and looked him directly in his 4 eyes. Go home, Ambassador. Tell your masters what you have seen. Tell them that humanity is done being polite. Tell them that if they want war, we will give them a war they will never forget. Vornak fled. 3 days later, his report reached the Velthury High Council. Panic spread through the Dominion. How had humans entered their space? How had they photographed the homeworld? What else could they do? The council made their decision. This insult could not stand. Humanity must be destroyed completely. Not conquered. Not enslaved. Destroyed. They sent out the call. From every corner of Velthury space, ships began to gather. The Kreth sent their battleships. The Morvani sent their cruisers. The Telek sent their fighters. Every species under Velthury control contributed to the fleet. When the gathering was complete, over 10,000 warships hung in space like a cloud of death. It was the largest fleet in galactic history. Admiral Korvac, the greatest military commander the Valkyrie had ever produced, took command. He was old and scarred, a veteran of 50 campaigns. He had never lost a battle. "We will crush them," he announced to his captains. "We will burn their worlds. We will salt their fields. When we are finished, no one will remember that humans ever existed." His fleet moved toward human space. On Earth, General Marcus Cole watched the enemy fleet on his screens. 10,000 ships. His fleet had only 800. "They're coming," Nina Vance said quietly. Marcus nodded. "Let them come." Daniel Shaw arrived at the command center. He had just returned from Valkyrie space with Grace. They had been gone for months, gathering intelligence, making contacts, planting seeds. "The subject species are ready," Daniel reported. "The Krath, the Morvani, the Telek. They hate the Valkyrie more than they fear them. They just need a spark." "Project Prometheus is ready," Nina added. "The message is prepared. All we need is the signal." Marcus looked at the fleet on his screen. 800 ships against 10,000. The numbers were impossible. But numbers were not everything. "The Valkyrie believe this will be easy," Marcus said. "They believe we are still the soft, friendly species that came to the stars 50 years ago. They have not learned the lesson of New Haven." He turned to face his officers. These were the best humanity had to offer. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, diplomats, all of them, united by grief and anger and hope. "Today, we teach them," Marcus said. "Today, they learn what happens when you push humanity too far." Catherine Price entered the room. "Admiral Korvac has sent a message. He's offering us one final chance to surrender." Marcus laughed. It was not a happy sound. "What did you tell him?" Catherine smiled. "I told him that surrender is not in our vocabulary." The fleet launched that night. 800 human ships, black against the darkness, moving toward the largest battle in history. Daniel Shaw commanded the Defiance from its bridge. Grace Holloway stood beside him. "Are you afraid?" she asked. Daniel thought about it. He remembered New Haven. He remembered the bodies. He remembered the child's toy in the ashes. He remembered every name that Catherine had read. "No," he said. "I'm not afraid. I'm ready." Grace nodded. She felt the same way. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another star in the darkness. Ahead of them, the enemy waited. Humanity was coming. And they were not coming as victims. They were coming as a storm. The two fleets met at Covenant Point, a crossroads of space where three nebulas came together. For centuries, the Valkyrie had used this place to crush their enemies. They believed it was lucky. They believed nothing could defeat them here. They were wrong. Admiral Korvac looked at his display and laughed. 800 human ships against his 10,000. It was not even a battle. It was an execution. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let these creatures hear their death sentence." His face appeared on every human screen. "Humans," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You have come to die. I offer you one final mercy. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and I will make you suffer." On the bridge of the Defiance, Daniel Shaw looked at the alien admiral. He thought about New Haven. He thought about 17,000 dead. He thought about the child's toy he still carried in his pocket. "Open a channel," he said. Grace pressed the button. "You're live, Captain." Daniel's face appeared on every Valkyrie screen. He looked calm. He looked cold. He looked like a man who had nothing left to lose. "We came to the stars with open hands," Daniel said. "We wanted peace. We wanted friendship. We believed that kindness was strength. You answered our kindness with blood. You murdered our children. You burned our homes. You thought you taught us a lesson. He leaned forward. You did, but not the lesson you intended. You taught us that some enemies cannot be reasoned with. You taught us that some fights cannot be avoided. You taught us that sometimes the only way to survive is to become something you never wanted to be. Korvac's smile faded. There was something in the human's eyes that he had never seen before. Something that made his four hearts beat faster. We are not here to surrender, Daniel said. We are not here to beg. We are here to answer what you did to New Haven. We are here to show you that humanity does not break. We are here to teach you what happens when you push us too far. He smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Welcome to your lesson. The battle began. The human ships moved in ways the Velthari had never seen. They were faster, more agile, more unpredictable. They weaved between enemy formations like water through rocks. They fired weapons that cut through Velthari shields like they were not there. Nina Vance's research had found the weakness. Human engineers had built the weapons to exploit it. Every shot hit home. Velthari ships began to explode. Korvac stared at his display in disbelief. His perfect formation was falling apart. His mighty fleet was taking losses. This was not possible. This was not happening. All ships, attack! He screamed. Destroy them. Destroy them all. The Velthari fired everything they had. Thousands of weapons lit up the darkness. Human ships began to fall. The Defiant shook as enemy fire hit its shields. Shields at 60%, Grace reported. Hold the line, Daniel ordered. We just need to buy time. In the command center far behind the battle, General Marcus Cole watched the chaos unfold. Human ships were dying. The plan was working, but the cost was terrible. Now, he said quietly, activate Project Prometheus. Nina pressed the button. Across Velthari space, every communication system came alive. Every screen, every speaker, every device that could receive a signal suddenly showed the same thing, the truth, footage of New Haven, bodies in the streets, children dead in their schools, the Velthari ships firing on fleeing civilians. Every moment of horror recorded and broadcast to the entire Dominion. But that was not all. Nina had compiled a history. Centuries of Velthari crimes. Every massacre. Every genocide. Every atrocity committed against the subject species. The Kreth remembered their enslaved ancestors. The Marvani remembered their stolen children. The Telek remembered their burned cities. And at the end of the message, a simple promise from humanity. We are fighting for our freedom. Fight for yours. The effect was immediate. On a Kreth battleship, the captain watched the footage and felt something break inside him. He thought about his grandfather, who had died in Velthari chains. He thought about his children, who lived in fear. Cut engines, he ordered. We're going home, sir? His first officer asked. We're going home, the captain repeated. Our people need us more than the Velthari do. Across the fleet, the same scene repeated. Kreth ships turned away. Marvani cruisers withdrew. Telek fighters refused to engage. The subject species had spent centuries waiting for this moment. Someone had finally shown them that the Velthari could bleed. Korvac watched his fleet dissolve. Ships were leaving the battle. Others were receiving distress calls from their homeworlds. Rebellions were breaking out across the Dominion. No, he whispered. No, this cannot be happening. But it was happening. His 10,000 ships became 8,000. Then 6,000. Then 4,000. And still the humans came, pressing their attack, never stopping, never retreating. Grace Holloway led a squadron of fighters toward the Velthari flagship. Her ship had been hit 3 times. One engine was dead. Half her weapons were offline. Grace, pull back, Daniel ordered over the radio. You can't survive another hit. I can make it, she said. I can end this. She pushed her damaged fighter forward, diving through enemy fire. The flagship loomed ahead, massive and terrible. Its bridge was visible through a viewing window. From New Haven, Grace whispered. She fired her last missiles at the bridge, then ejected half a second before her fighter crashed into the flagship's command center. The explosion was enormous. The entire front of the ship disappeared in fire. Admiral Korvac died without ever understanding what had happened. The Volturi command structure collapsed. Without their admiral, the remaining ships fell into chaos. Some tried to retreat. Some tried to surrender. Some fought to the death. When the battle ended, humanity had lost 400 ships. The Volturi had lost over 7,000. Their fleet was broken. Their empire was crumbling. Their subject species were in open revolt. Daniel found Grace drifting in the wreckage, still in her escape pod. She was badly injured but alive. He brought her aboard the Defiance himself. Did we win? She asked weakly. Daniel looked out at the field of destruction, at the burning ships and scattered debris, at the cost of victory. We survived, he said. That's a start. Grace smiled and closed her eyes. The Battle of Covenant Point was over, but the war was just beginning. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Covenant Point. The Volturi Dominion no longer existed. After their defeat, the subject species had risen up across the galaxy. The Kreth declared independence. The Morvani overthrew their governors. The Telek burned the Volturi administrative centers to the ground. Within 6 months, 2,000 years of empire had crumbled to dust. The Volturi themselves were scattered now. Some had fled to distant worlds. Some had surrendered and accepted judgment for their crimes. Some had died fighting in wars they could not win. They were no longer masters of the galaxy. They were refugees, begging for shelter from the same species they had once oppressed. Humanity had not destroyed them. That was important. When victory was complete, Catherine Price had stood before the United Earth Coalition and made her position clear. We did not fight this war to become what they were, she said. We fought to survive. We fought for justice. We fought so that what happened on New Haven would never happen again. But we will not commit genocide. We will not massacre civilians. We will not become monsters just because monsters attacked us. It had been a controversial decision. Many humans wanted revenge. Many wanted the Volturi to suffer as New Haven had suffered. But Catherine held firm, and in the end, humanity followed her lead. The galaxy noticed where the Volturi had ruled through fear. Humanity offered something different. Friendship, trade, cooperation. The species that had suffered under the Dominion looked at Earth and saw something they had never seen before. A powerful nation that did not use its power to oppress others. The Galactic Cooperative was born. It started small. Just humanity and the Kreth, signing a treaty of mutual defense. Then the Morvani joined. Then the Telek. Then a dozen other species who had spent centuries hiding from the Dominion's shadow. Within 5 years, the cooperative included 47 member species, all committed to a simple principle: never again. Daniel Shaw served as military attaché to the cooperative. He had turned down promotions, medals, and honors. He did not want glory. He wanted to make sure that what happened to New Haven never happened to anyone else. Grace Holloway had recovered from her injuries, though she still walked with a slight limp. She commanded the patrol fleet that kept the peace along the old Dominion borders. Pirates and warlords had risen in the chaos, and Grace hunted them down one by one. You could have a desk job, Daniel told her once. You've earned it. Grace had laughed. And miss all the fun? Never. General Marcus Cole had retired after the war. He lived in a small house in Colorado, Near the mountains where he had built humanity's fleet, Dr. Nina Vance visited him sometimes. They would sit on his porch and watch the sunset and talk about the old days. Marcus still carried his daughter's photograph in his pocket. He touched it every morning when he woke up. "Do you think she would be proud?" he asked Nina once. Nina thought about it. She thought about Amy, the teacher who had died protecting her students. She thought about the world that Amy had wanted to build. "Yes," Nina said. "I think she would be proud." The first General Assembly of the Galactic Cooperative was held on a space station above Earth. Representatives from 47 species gathered in a great hall, sitting side by side as equals. Many of them had been enemies. Many of them had reasons to hate each other. But they were here, together, trying to build something new. Catherine Price walked to the podium. She was older now, her hair completely white, but her eyes were still sharp. "5 years ago," she began, "humanity suffered a tragedy that nearly broke us. The massacre of New Haven was meant to teach us that we were weak, that we were inferior, that we should accept our place at the bottom of the galactic order." She paused and looked around the room. The Velthari made a mistake. They thought our kindness was weakness. They thought our desire for peace meant we could not fight. They thought that by hurting us, they could make us submit. Catherine smiled. They were wrong. Humanity did not submit. We did not break. We came together as we have never come together before. We put aside our differences and our old hatreds and our petty conflicts. We built a fleet. We fought a war. We won. The room was silent. Every eye was on her. But our greatest victory was not the Battle of Covenant Point. Our greatest victory was what came after. We had the power to destroy the Velthari completely. We chose mercy. We had the power to build a new empire with ourselves at the top. We chose partnership. We had the power to become exactly what our enemies were. We chose to remain who we are. Catherine's voice grew stronger. We are not a species that rules through fear. We are not a species that conquers the weak. We are a species that builds, that creates, that reaches out to others with open hands, even when those hands have been burned before. She looked directly at the representatives of the subject species. The Krath, the Morvani, the Telek, all the others who had suffered under the Dominion. We know your pain. We share your scars. And we promise you this. What happened to us, what happened to you, will never happen again. Not while humanity stands. Not while this cooperative endures. She placed both hands on the podium. We are done being polite. We will never again mistake silence for acceptance. We will never again let evil go unchallenged because we fear conflict. But we are not done being kind. We are not done being generous. We are not done believing that the galaxy can be better than it was. Catherine straightened. This is who we are. This is what we offer. Join us, and we will build something the galaxy has never seen. A future where no one has to be afraid. A future where strength protects rather than oppresses. A future worthy of those we have lost. The hall erupted in applause. Every species, every representative, all of them standing, all of them cheering, all of them believing. On New Haven, rebuilt and thriving, a memorial stood in the center of the new capital. 17,000 names were carved into black stone. Humans and aliens alike came to pay their respects. Flowers covered the ground every day. At the base of the memorial, preserved under glass, was a child's stuffed bear, scorched but intact, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been saved. Daniel Shaw visited every year on the anniversary. He would stand before the memorial and read the names, every single one. Then he would walk through the streets of the new colony and watch the children play. Some of them were human. Some were Krath or Morvani or Telek. All of them laughed together, played together, grew up together. The hatred of the past was fading. Something new was taking its place. Grace found him there on the 5th anniversary. She walked up beside him and took his hand. "It's beautiful," she said, watching the children. Daniel nodded. He thought about everything they had been through. The massacre, the war, the battle, the years of rebuilding. All of it had led to this moment. "We did it," he said quietly. "We actually did it." Grace squeezed his hand. "We're not done yet. There's still work to do." Daniel smiled. She was right. There would always be work to do. But that was okay. That was what it meant to be human. You kept building. You kept hoping. You kept reaching for something better. Humanity was no longer polite. They had learned that lesson on New Haven, but they were still, despite everything, kind. And the galaxy had learned. Those were not the same thing. High above, the stars shone bright. And among them, humanity's ships kept watch, protecting a future that had once seemed impossible, a future worth fighting for.